Okay, let's talk about building a basic pivot table. Now, in order to build a pivot table, we have to identify some type of data set or another table of information. We have a blank workbook open right now. So what we're going to end up doing in this example is reach out, identify a particular folder that's in our exercise folder, and inside that folder is another folder called sales data. Within that sales data, let's take a look at what's inside that. And then here's our exercise files, and then there's a folder here called sales data. So if I open this up, we have two separate text files, a 2016, 2017 text file. Let's just open it up real quick. And as you can see, it's just a tab separated, tab delimited list of information. The first line, of course, is the column headers, or i.e. field headers, and then everything else below that. So we're not going to do much with this right now. We're going to close this down, and then I'm going to move this out of the way, and let's begin our connections for our pivot table. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to come over to my data ribbon tab. Over here in the Get and Transform Data group, we're going to find the Get Data option. We're going to click this and then hover over the From File, and then come down to From Folder. And I'm going to click this one time, and then I'm going to navigate over to the exercise folder that we have. Open that up, and I don't see any of the exercise files. Why? Because we're looking at only folders. So I'm going to look and find the sales data folder and click Open. Now Excel's going to do a little conversion and identify what's inside that folder, and as we can see here, it's identified the two separate text files. From here, I'm just going to click Load. When I do, Excel opens up here, and I'm going to be on the Table Design Contextual tab here because my active cell is inside of a table. If I click outside of this, those tabs go away, those ribbon tabs go away. So I have to click back inside there anywhere. And then over here, I have a Queries and Connections task pane that opened up. What I want to do next is I'm going to hover over the Sales Data table here, and then it's going to give me another preview of information here. I'm going to come down and click on Edit because I need to get right to my fields that are within that folder. Now, as I can see, it has a number of columns here: content, the name of the files, extension, and a lot of otherwise useless information. So I want to remove everything. I want to keep only the content. So I'm going to right click on this guy and then choose Remove Other Columns. And now that's all gone. Okay, now it's just this stuff. Now before I do anything else, I'm going to rename this query here. I'm going to call this Transaction Table, remembering not to put any spaces. So there are no spaces. I just use camel casing. Okay, so that capitalizes the first letter of each word. Okay, so I've now given it a name. Now I'm going to come over and find these little down pointing arrows. There's two of them. I'm going to click that one time, and now Excel converts all of the content, gives me a preview. So here shows me the combined files because there's more than one file inside that folder, and here's the preview of that content. Now from here I'm going to click OK, and there you have it. It combines it all for me, and now from here I'm going to look to see that there are a number of fields in here, columns, and I don't need all of them. I see my trans number is already selected, so I'm going to leave it that way. And now I want to select other fields, so I'm going to press Control on my keyboard and hold that down. So now that I want to identify the fields that I want to remove, because I don't need them all, I see that trans number is selected already. I'm going to hold down Control on my keyboard, and I'm going to click Website and Units, and then scroll to the right. I still have my Control key pressed down, Discount and Price. So now I have 5 separate fields selected, and I want to remove them. So I'm going to right click the headers of any one of them, and then choose Remove Columns. Now it's condensed down nicely for me. Now I'm all done with this information, so I'm going to come over to my Home ribbon tab here in the Power Query Editor, and I'm going to click the bottom half of Close and Load, and then choose Close and Load To. That'll open up a little window here. There it is, a little dialog box. And all I got to verify is that the radio button is selected here for only create connection, and then I want to place a check mark here for add this data to the data model, and then click OK. Excel compiles everything, combines both those text files into a single table here in my Excel worksheet. So let's take a look. How many records do I have? I just press Control arrow key down. That takes me to the last record. It looks like I have 50,918 records. Impressive. It's a lot of information. And this is specifically why we would rather use a pivot table to analyze this data. Okay, so now that I've done this, I'm going to come over to my queries and connection task pane. I'm going to close this down. I'm all done with it. And then I'm going to come up to my insert ribbon tab, and here in the tables I'm going to click the top half of pivot table. And then it asks me, okay, is this the table arranged? Remember, we named this table earlier transaction table, so that is the correct one. I want it to go to a new worksheet, and then I'm going to click OK. Now that it's compiled everything for me, I see that I have a new worksheet over here. I'm going to double click this, and I'm going to call this total sales. Just like that, and I'll press enter to accept that. Next, I want to build out my pivot table. Right now I have just the framework of it over here. I'm going to come over to my pivot table fields task pane, and I'm going to place a check mark next to sales rep and revenue, net revenue, and it builds it out. So that's a very small basic pivot table, which is not bad. But then I see my net revenue. I want to change the name of this from sum of net revenue to just revenue, and then I want to format this as currency here with no decimal places. I want to remove the change. So I'm going to come over to my values box here. I'm going to click sum of net revenue one time, and then I'm going to click value field settings, and that opens this up. So from here I'm just going to remove everything before revenue, and then down here I'm going to come to number format. I just want to format the current number down here. So I'm going to go to my accounting. I'm going to remove that change, the decimal place, click OK, and then click OK again. Ba-bam! That looks much better. Now to finish this off, I'm going to come over and find my products field, and here it is. I'm going to click and drag this down to my column. So I'm going to click and drag this here. Now watch the pivot table. That opens up nicely. So now I have a nice little report identified by salespersons, and then the locations of the sales, right? Aspen and so on. All right. Well, I hope this helps. Thanks for joining me. In the next exercise, we're going to look at putting in a pivot chart and then modifying that chart a little. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you in the next exercise.